And we are live. Welcome back, everybody, to the Not Important Gaming Podcast with Jeremy and Derek. I am Jeremy.
I am Derek.
And we've got some good topics today we're going to be talking about. We are talking about the game streaming services such as PlayStation Now and Gameplay was the other one, right? The big
right.
one. And then we're also going to be talking about Bethesda and kind of how they're staying afloat. I think it's an interesting topic to discuss. But before we get started, what have you been up to this week, Derek?
Yeah, I mean, this weekend's kind of been, this week's been pretty uneventful, outside of just school and whatnot, school and work typically, but like, this weekend, did a little bit of running around. It's been kind of a hectic weekend. I got back sometime, I want to say like Saturday night.
Right.
I ended up staying up until like 8 this morning and then crashed until like 4 in the afternoon. I was just like, Jesus, where's the day gone? And then I just kind of like, I don't know, I played a few games, a couple Final Fantasy games that I got working on my PS2 emulator that I set up today. So
Nice.
Yeah, it's just been pretty relaxed ever since I had a chance to kind of chill out again. So
Which Final Fantasies are you playing?
I got 12 up and running, and then I started. I made sure that that 10 was like okay, you know, that like the frame rate and everything was working okay, that it was a good file. That I downloaded. So I mean, yeah, it's both of those games are running pretty fine, but I did get into 12 a little bit. 12 was a game I had played before. I've never beat it, but I got like, I want to say like 3/4 of the way through it. And yeah, it was a good game when I played it. It was probably like a couple of years ago though, last time that I really like dove deep into it. So yeah, I was just kind of wanting to like wind down and play something in a day.
I could never really get into Final Fantasy 12. I loved 10. 10 was my first Final Fantasy.
Oh,
and
really?
I loved the shit out of that game. But I could just never get into 12. It was just, you know, I don't know, I wasn't super wild about the combat system. I felt like you didn't have a whole lot of control as compared to earlier Final Fantasies.
Yeah, no, you definitely don't. 12 is, how could I put it lightly? 12 is awful. No. But yeah, it's just it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, the combat system is obviously like not preferred. I think by like most people in the base, like most people don't like the kind of like stand still wait cast type of like turn based.
Right.
You know, which is exactly what that is in like an other world, and in other ways like a kind of open world, like free running type of game. It just it looks very weird to have a game that plays like that be turn-based like that, where the combat is not like you go into a battle more or less as it is like you kind of run into enemies on the field, and yet it's still turn-based. You know what I mean? It's just, yeah, it's kind of clunky in that regard. But
you know, it's unfortunate because the world itself, like I mean I've looked over the lore, and like the world itself is a really interesting world for Final Fantasy 12. But I don't know, I can't get past the combat system to enjoy it.
Right, yeah, that was something I had to like more or less push myself through. It's one of those things where I think like once you get far enough into the story, you're kind of you invest enough into the story that you can like kind of focus yourself on that and not think so much about like the really shitty combat system, you know? That's at least what I did. So I was just gonna do it until I beat it to have like a full opinion on it. But yeah, but by no means is it like near my favorite Final Fantasy game. It was just kind of what I got into this weekend.
No, fair enough. My week has been it's actually been pretty relaxing compared to you know the last 3 weeks of hell that I've been going through getting moved.
Yeah,
so it's really nice. Good. Yeah, it's really nice to just be relaxed finally for a week. But I got to I got around to playing with the upcoming release of Monster Hunter World actually here on PC. I decided I decided I was going to play it on PlayStation to kind of warm myself back up, since we're finally going to be getting the chance. I'm finally going to be getting the chance to play it with some friends. Got a lot of friends who will only play games on PC.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm pretty excited for that. But on top of that, and I think even more interesting than that, the Pathfinder second edition playtest just released this week, which I don't know if you know anything about like tabletop role playing, so I might just be speaking gibberish at you.
No, I haven't heard about this. What is it?
So to get the short version of a really long story, Pathfinder, the original Pathfinder was a revised version of Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 that another company made thanks to basically a really strange error that the Wizards of the Coast, the company that makes Dungeons and Dragons, made, where they basically made Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 open source. Anybody can use any of the rules. So a company called Paizo, who had previously done adventure paths, basically pre-made adventures for Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, made their own revised version of 3.5 that kind of streamlined the rules, made it easier and more efficient to play it while not really sacrificing a whole lot of the complexity and ability to kind of personalize your character that 3.5 was popular for. Well, gotcha. Paizo, now several years later, I don't even know how many years, maybe I'm absolutely just pulling this number out of my ass, but I want to say 12 years later. It's been a long time. They're just now releasing the second edition of Pathfinder. It's very interesting. It's a really cool system that it's a playtest, so it's got a lot of issues right now. But we had a good time on Saturday night, last night, playing it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
you guys have because you guys set that up right on the weekends.
Yes, and it was actually I'm not gonna talk a whole lot about the second edition this week because I think that's actually my topic next week. But I was just really excited about it. We had a good time playing it, and it's something I'm super stoked about, so I had to at least mention it.
Yeah, no, I get you. It's always nice when there's like a big change, something you've been waiting for a long time, and it's like to know that it's not been just completely forgotten, but it's finally gets attention after so long.
Oh yeah,
so many years. It's like, oh yes, fuck, nice.
Do we want to get started on our first topic then?
Yeah. Let's see, what do we got? Well, I mean, we could just go in order if you want.
Yeah. I think that'll be your topic: the downfall of gaming streaming services. Things like GameFly and PlayStation Now. So what do you got for us?
Well, so basically, when I looked this up earlier this week, I realized that GameFly, their streaming service, was actually ending, and this was a service that they've had since they launched it, I think, 2015 on Amazon Fire TV, and then later landed on Samsung Smart TVs and other devices. But it's going to shut down its game streaming service on August 31st, so later on this month, after roughly 3 years. And I mean, you can still rent games from GameFly, on mailed discs, which is the service they originally offered when they formed back in 2002.
Right, I remember the commercials back when I was a lot younger.
Yeah. So they're still offering the original service, but the streaming service that they have, their cloud game streaming service that they launched in 2015, is going to be. And I mean, there were a number of rumors surrounding it that it was dying off due to a lack of revenue and support. I think it just wasn't one of those things that really got that popular, which kind of is the overarching theme of talking about the downfall of gaming streaming services. But EA announced back in June at E3 that they'd be launching their own streaming subscription package for their own games called Origin Access Premier. I don't know if you remember that.
Vaguely sounds familiar.
Right, and so essentially that is going to be their own game streaming platform. And the news and the timing of it started a rumor that EA was behind the ending of GameFly's streaming service. But EA denied it. They denied buying GameFly's streaming service, saying that they just absorbed the technology behind the service back in May. So they were only kind of like part to do with it. They weren't like taking GameFly's actual service. They were just kind of like taking assets of it, if that made sense. But like, and I think they're going to be using that for their Origin Access premiere that they'll be launching probably sometime next year.
Right.
But
Maddie Rambo
that
says, do the streamers cheat in the games they play to help make their streams better? It's not that kind of streaming. Basically, so to explain what these streaming services are, they're basically, so PlayStation Now is the one that I'm most familiar with. And
right.
if you I think Jack and Daxter's on there is a good example. So if you had like a classic game that you used to love playing all the time when you were younger, on like PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 1, a lot of these services provide a way to, rather than having to go out and try to hunt that game down or buy it on the internet, you can pay a monthly subscription to have a whole group of games that are available to you that you can just pick up and play whenever you want. You don't have to go out and actually have the disc. You can just stream it directly to your console. I think the issue, so it has nothing to do with like streamers, as in like somebody would play on Twitch. You'd stream it much like you would stream Netflix.
Right.
But the issue, at least from what I had heard in the past, and maybe this is outdated information, but the reason that I think a lot of people were really like super wild about it was just the fact that there tended to be, like, you had to have a really good connection or you weren't going to be able to play at all. And even then, you were going to be dealing with a decent amount of input lag most of the time you're playing. Again, that might be outdated information. That's just what I had heard a while ago, and why I never really got into like getting a PlayStation Now subscription or a GameFly subscription or anything like that.
Right. No, that could definitely be part of it. I think the different system requirements, the minimums for each game is going to vary, to some extent. And, when you have a whole library of games like that, it's kind of hard to, it's kind of hard to assume that you're going to, unless you have a pretty decent PC, that you're going to be playing everything pretty well, at 60 FPS and whatnot. But
yeah,
I think when it comes down to it, that could be a factor. I think another big factor to it all, though, seems to be kind of like just taking a note from like what EA is planning on doing. Like EA's streaming service that they're going to be launching, this Origins Premiere, is going to be exclusively their own games. They don't want to open it up to any other market. It's just it's all inclusive to their own games. So I think part of it is the lack of true accessibility across all platforms, but then probably also the fact that I think maybe it's just a matter of like the customers aren't really ready for like a big shift in that market. I don't think a lot of people are screaming for like a gaming streaming service, if that makes sense. Like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime have become so popular and have done so well for themselves in terms of streaming, movies and TV shows. And even though video games is the largest grossing form of entertainment that exists, well above movies and TV shows at this point in time, the fact that, PlayStation Now and, GameFly's streaming service and, a few choice others that, are pretty much at the top of that aren't doing better than they are. And it definitely aren't to the level of like Netflix and Hulu, kind of like speaks for itself. I don't think that it's something that, the customer base really wants, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe gamers just aren't really into it.
That makes perfect sense. And to kind of exemplify on that, I mean, me personally, I play a lot of like older games. I play, especially PlayStation 2. PlayStation 2 is my absolute jam. Shout out to Sony for making the PlayStation 2 the best console ever made.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it just, I don't know that I play, those older games enough to justify getting a streaming service, as opposed to, oh, I want to play Hitman, or I want to play Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, or something like that. It's more cost effective for me to just go out to like a vintage stock or whatever and find a copy of that game. I mean, most of the games that I play on these, they're not like super rare games that are hard to find.
Right.
And yeah, and I think that's the big issue is, I mean, you're talking about what the difference between a one-time purchase of $5 for the one game you do want, or a monthly subscription of like $15. Isn't that what it typically is?
Yeah, they're roughly around that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the thing. We've already learned this lesson with MMOs. Like subscriptions don't work anymore. Even World of Warcraft had to abandon that model. And I mean, this is the biggest subscription-based game out there, and they had to abandon a subscription-based model as opposed to a freemium model.
Right.
And yeah, no, it just doesn't work. I don't know why they thought that kind of system would work, as opposed to, I mean, we do have right now stuff like Steam, or I mean, just buying off of a virtual marketplace. Just in general, seems to be a more cost-effective way.
Well, and not only that, but if you're wanting to play games that are 12 to 20 years old at this point, that are considered virtual console now, like GameCube, PS1, PS2 era, and even before that,
right?
And you don't have any issue with like the ethics of downloading a torrent, or finding a ROM for that and installing an emulator, then you could literally get this same game for free, essentially. So as long as you have the knowledge of how to set up your emulators and get ROMs, and it's not that I'm condoning that, but I'm just saying there are so many alternatives. You don't need to pay $15 a month to get access to that stuff anymore. You don't.
If the FBI is listening, Jeremy, I did not say that. Derek was the one promoting pirating games.
Yeah. Don't kill me.
Maddie Rainbow would be pointless for me because I don't play enough games to justify it. Nice Baldur's Gate name drop. Yeah, no, I love Baldur's Gate. Great game. Yeah, no, exactly like you said. Emulators, they've been popular for a while now. They've been around for a while. They're not difficult to set up. And yeah, exactly like you said, unless you're like a stickler for, like, I want not even the authentic experience. Because, I mean, playing it on a PlayStation is not, or a PS4 is not an authentic experience as compared to playing a PS2 game on the PS2. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know who they thought this streaming service was for. I don't know. It's just a really confusing thing, and I think I even remember like hearing about streaming services a while ago and being like, yeah, no, I really don't know why you would ever get that.
I think it's something that they had to consider, as a good venture to get into. Like, in theory, it's right. Like, okay, well, if this worked so well for TV shows and for movies, in terms of like Netflix and Hulu, making a lot of success out of it, then why couldn't this pertain to gaming, which is arguably just as big of a form of entertainment, if not bigger. But I see where their head was at when they decided to invest in this, but like when it came down to it, I think practically speaking, it doesn't seem really essential. Like, it doesn't seem needed. And I think this is kind of like the player base just kind of showing where they want to put their wallet instead. It's they're not really getting the numbers that they want. And, that's to me at least, that's indicative of this not really being something that works. I don't think people want it, but who knows what the future is going to be like. I know PlayStation Now, EA clearly feels enough of a way about it that they're planning on going forward with this Origin Access premiere next year. So I guess we'll just see. It's not completely done in. It doesn't seem like what they want out of it is what they're going to end up getting.
Right. And like you mentioned, like going back to it doing well for groups like Netflix, HBO Now, groups like that. I mean, I think that comes down to the fundamental difference between a TV show and a video game. This is the thing. Like, with a TV show, you can only watch a TV show at a specific point in time. Now, granted, there are things like TiVo that exist now, but I mean, even those have kind of fallen out of popularity thanks to streaming services, because you don't have to wait for those shows to come on anymore. And that's the fundamental difference with the game. You don't have to. You never had to wait to play a game, unless you're talking about mobile games. But that's a whole other can of worms that we're probably going to talk about at some point in time.
Yeah, the mobile market.
Games have always been, I pop the disc in and I'm playing the game, like boom, boom, right there. And that's why I think groups like Netflix are doing so well, but GameFly is now shutting down. It's just not. It doesn't meet the same kind of demand. It doesn't solve the same problem.
Right. And I think even looking at Netflix's model specifically and comparing that to GameFly's streaming model, that Netflix also has a service where you can order certain shows that aren't on Netflix, or at least that they offer, but they're not being streamed on Netflix, and they can deliver the disc to your house, right? But you see that's like heavily underutilized compared to their streaming platform, the shows that are on. Like I gotta wonder how many people actually bother with like discs that Netflix sends to their house, right? Whereas that's GameFly's entire model. That was their original model,
right?
So I think maybe that is just to say that like you said, I mean there really is a difference in the demand. Like that works for GameFly for games, like sending in games working, but it's like the opposite for Netflix.
Yeah, I mean, sending physical discs, I mean, back when GameFly first started, sending physical discs made sense because it was a pre-virtual market economy. You didn't have, you couldn't just, I'm gonna go on to Xbox Live and download the new whatever game.
Oh yeah, no, 2002.
Yeah. You had to go down to
all that.
Yeah, you had to go down to GameStop or Babbage's or goddamn whatever it was, and you had to buy the copy. And at that point in time, I think even they didn't really have the return policy that they have now, because now you have 7 days to return a game from GameStop, which even further pushes people away from getting this the PlayStation Now or stuff like that. Because again, if you want a game, just go down to GameStop, buy the physical copy of it, try it out for a bit. If you don't like it, bring it back. They'll give you your money back, or they'll let you get another game for equivalent price. Right. It's not a risk.
It's funny because I know somebody who worked at GameStop for like 2.5 years he told me that he's been telling people this for like a long time. He was like, the best way to just like game the system rather than having it game you, like when it comes to GameStop, is just to like get a game, decide within that time frame that they give you, like a 30-day policy or whatever, whether or not you like it. If you don't, then turn it back in and get your money. It's like don't bother with getting screwed over by all these rental services and stuff like that, because it's essentially the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at that point in time, you're not committed to that. You're not committed to that money for those first 7 days. It's just a better option through and through.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just I can't see. Again, it's one of those things. I feel like somebody really dropped the ball when that meeting was had. They're talking about what can we really do. I mean, Netflix is doing well. Let's set up a gaming streaming service. I can't see where they thought that was a good idea. It requires so much from the consumer to work, and it requires a certain it requires them to be in a very tight financial range where they have the money to spare to be paying a monthly service. They're also making enough money to have a stable internet connection. It requires a very specific market that I don't think they really thought through with that.
Yeah. Even if after the fact you're just kind of looking at the I guess the conclusion of what everybody who has gotten into that, who's invested into the gaming streaming market, all the different services like the PS Now and whatnot. I mean, if you consider PS Now as probably like the leader among the gaming streaming services, which I'm not sure what other ones are probably doing as well as they are, but I mean, if you want to say that that's the best, that's not really a high bar to set, because, I mean, I have a PS4, and like it just, PS Now just seems like it's pretty underutilized. I can't see too many people actually bothering to pay for that service. Not only that, but I've looked into it myself and seen some of the games that they offer, and it's just a lot of it's very hit or miss. Like they don't have like a full library of all the things that you would be looking for if you were wanting to be part of that service.
Really?
I think,
is that just part of a contracting issue?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't looked too deep into it. I would imagine that could be part of it, that they haven't really secured the rights to, a lot of the games that they do want. But I do know that, I mean, they kind of like already took a massive shit on their fan base by essentially just tearing away the backwards compatibility, with the PS4 anyway. So, whereas a lot of people bought games on their virtual market, on the PlayStation Store, back in like the PS3 days or whatever, they weren't able to really carry those games over with them onto the PS4. Their solution was PlayStation Now.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it seems like I don't know. It's kind of like they're digging their own grave to some extent. But also, I just feel like the service itself is very underwhelming. But if that's the one that's kind of leading the pack, then I guess that says everything that it needs to say about kind of where game streaming is going.
Yeah. So with GameFly canceling that, I believe GameFly is actually they're being acquired now by EA as well, aren't they?
They're part of the streaming service that they had, not GameFly itself.
Just the
GameFly is going.
Okay, just the streaming service.
Right. GameFly is going to continue to be its own company. It's still going to offer its original service of mailed discs or whatever. But no, EA isn't even acquiring the streaming service. They acquired the technology of it, and then the people who were working on that streaming service. That was kind of the deal that they made. They weren't like buying it straight up. I don't think they more or less denied that.
Yeah, here we go. I'm actually seeing it right here. I pulled it up on eaengadget.com. It says GameFly is set to shut down its game streaming service at the end of this month. According to Variety, GameFly made the call to go the way of OnLive before EA acquired the company's cloud gaming assets and development team in May. So basically, EA bought the team that was responsible for that streaming service, as well as all the assets for the service itself, all the games, all the code for the streaming. So it sounds like maybe.
Well, and I think I think a lot of people took that to mean that like they were more or less like buying out GameFly with their streaming service. But I think maybe and it could have been, and this is like rumors so far, but I just don't think their numbers were there with the streaming service, and EA kind of bailed them out by being willing to buy their assets and just the technology and the team that was working.
That's an interesting theory. What do you think EA would have to gain from that? Because EA is not exactly known for being the most altruistic company in the world.
I think the timing was just right though, because they could use those assets and those people to work on what they announced back in E3 or back at E3 in June with their own streaming service, Origin Access. So maybe they're just kind of like absorbing GameFly's streaming assets into their own, since they're kind of in the same venture, and GameFly is pretty much done with it. It was kind of a well-timed deal.
Okay, so they were just like, oh, hey, we don't have to develop our own code. We can just buy your code.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. God, I feel bad for the guys on that team, though. It's gonna be hell working for EA.
Jesus Christ.
It always is. That's certainly interesting. I don't. It'll be interesting to watch out for, but I don't know. Like I said, I don't know there's a whole lot of future in it, and I think this is just going to be another misstep in EA's decision making as of late. It seems like they're continually out of touch with the consumer and what they want. And I think this is gonna be another example of that here a year or two down the road when their numbers come in and they're not making money on it.
Yeah, they'll kind of look back at this at their next financial quarter and realize that they fucked up pretty hard.
And then,
yeah, I mean, this very well could be, a big misstep. But I mean, who knows? If they do end up turning a profit with this, or if this whole venture tends to like pick up, and people actually do, want a gaming streaming service, and they start really investing into it, and you see it just kind of on the up and up. I mean, I guess we'll see. I'll buy my words then, but right now it doesn't look too optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, I've already I watched that guy who drank that bottle of Tabasco sauce, so I'm not gonna say I'm gonna eat anything, but I will be severely shocked if EA actually turns a profit on this.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got a mediocre thing going right now with Origin. This is the thing. I don't know who plays anything on Origin apart from EA exclusives, and EA's been abscessing their community by the day at this point. You continually see people talking about how EA is anti-consumer. EA their games, the quality of their games is decreasing year by year, and I don't think this is going to bail them out. It's just I don't understand why they're trying to push the system with Origin so hard.
Well, not only that, but it's like they're not even trying to secure any licensing deals, with other video game developers or publishers. I mean, they're only sticking to what they have immediate rights over, which is what this entire streaming platform is about. It's just their own games. So, they're already diminishing any real impact that they could have to make this successful, I think, by like kind of cornering themselves like this.
Right.
But, again, I guess we'll see.
Maddie Rambo, EA gets bought by Google as Google branches into the game streaming service. Does Google have their hands in any sort of gaming right now? I think they're pretty clear of that right now.
Outside of Google Play, which is a very, very relaxed way of saying that they're in the gaming service.
Yeah, it's mobile, which granted is much more lucrative than a lot of other gaming mediums right now. But again, that's a conversation for another day. I don't know if Google were to get involved, it'd be interesting to see how they handle it, because on one hand, get
involved, they definitely would have the money.
They'd absolutely have the money. They could get involved with whatever they want to get involved with. The question is whether or not it would actually be a benefit to the consumer. Because on one hand, Google provides a lot of solid services, especially. I mean, there's a reason their search engine is the most commonly used one in the world.
Right.
But on the other hand, you look at things like YouTube, and YouTube has been. I don't think they've had a profitable quarter in years. It's I'm not sure. It's an interesting thought as to Google getting involved with pretty much any facet of gaming, actually. Maddie Rambo or Amazon buys them, some big company that already has a streaming platform. This is the thing. EA has enough money right now. I don't think EA is ever going to go away. I don't think they're going to get bought out by a larger company. They are the larger company. It doesn't matter how bad they fuck up. They've got enough money to recover. So when I speak fatalistically about that, like EA is abscessing supporters and abscessing money. I mean, you have to compare that to the amount of money they have currently. Like, they're losing pennies. And it's
Madden, NCAA, FIFA, NHL, MLB. I mean, EA has been off of these franchises, all of the sports franchises for years. And
Oh yeah.
every single year they renewing their contracts to do more. It's just, yeah, no, it's that's kind of why they're the shark that they are, and like that's kind of, I don't want to call them a monopoly because like in this industry they're not truly maybe they're a monopoly over the sports franchises for sure, but as a whole, developers over all of their developers or over like just the gaming industry in general, I wouldn't consider them a monopoly because there are other big contenders, there are other sharks in the water. But EA, I think, has gotten so big that they have kind of like a fucking attitude when it comes to feeling the need to really cater to their fans, demands and concerns, right? So that's kind of the reason why you see them, able to misstep and make bad moves time and time again, and take a loss here or there, is because they typically turn a profit every financial quarter anyways, just with the sheer amount that they make off of everything else that they have their hands in.
Oh yeah, no, they've got the casual gaming market pinned down, and that's never going away. Even with the growing complaints about Madden. I mean, especially, I've been watching. Over the last couple weeks I've been talking nonstop about Clean Prince Gaming, but he's got some really good. He does a lot of really good opinion pieces. He just released one about Madden and how it needs to stop being an annualized system. And this is something that I don't think I've brought it up to you before, but it's something I've talked about in the past, where they need to just start, unless they have a major update to the core mechanics or the core systems. They just need to be releasing every year a new downloadable roster, because that's what most Madden games are when they come out every year. They're not a new system. There's no new mechanics for the most part. It's just minor. It's a roster change and minor tweaks, and a half-assed attempt at a single player campaign.
Right.
And it's just, bottom line is, people keep buying it, even despite all the complaints that you're hearing about this. EA is not going away anytime soon, unfortunately. They're not.
No, they just for the kind of model that they have, like as a company, where they really don't feel inclined to do 110% for their fans, right? That's kind of the way that EA is. I think they found the perfect demographic of gamers to cater to, and that's kind of what they have their hands in, are the franchises that don't demand much to begin with, sports games typically just, they have the people who typically play Madden and NCAA and FIFA, not that they don't have demands for those games, but they're very relaxed demands compared to most other big AAA games that come out outside of EA anyways. So I think they found the sweet spot of not needing to care, if that makes sense, because it's
right.
something less than perfect in a Madden game, nobody's really gonna raise hell about it, if that makes sense.
Maddie Rambo, will EA participate in VR? I don't know. It's entirely plausible.
It is possible. I would imagine eventually any of the big players are really going to get into VR.
Oh yeah,
once they invested.
Once VR starts building up steam right now. Yeah. But VR is, again, another topic that I want to talk about on another day. That's one that me and Rita both agreed that later on, once we get our start, we definitely want to talk about the future of VR.
Right. Makes sense.
EA MLB VR. It'd be interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's very interesting to see the decline of these streaming services, and I can't say I was surprised. Can't say that I'm particularly disappointed. I don't know. I just think it was a failed endeavor from the get-go.
Yeah, I seem to share that sentiment. I just think that I don't want to speak too soon, because you know I really would love for there to be a space for this kind of a thing, but I just personally I don't need it, and I don't see it being needed by me anytime in the near future.
Right.
Because I see all the other avenues that I could go to get what I want without needing to pay a monthly subscription of 10 to 15 bucks in order to get it. So I don't see by that logic why anybody else would, if they're kind of in the same boat that I am. But in theory, the concept is good. I just think in practice it kind of failed.
Yeah, no, I mean, I more or less agree with you there. I think we've pretty much run that topic dry. Unless you have anything else you would add, any final thoughts from you?
No, it'd just be me kicking that dead horse again.
Yeah, pretty much.
Give it a one good swift kick before I leave.
So the other topic we had was I love that I needed this. I'm gonna pat myself on the back a little bit. But the absolute state of Bethesda.
Absolutely.
Man. This is just me gonna be being real mad. One more. What if you have 2 or 3 kids? This is the thing. I mean, a streaming service isn't going to. I still don't see the value of a streaming service over buying games or being able to hand down games. Even with a group of children. I mean, this is the thing. The games that are on a streaming service aren't typically of good quality. They're not typically of. I don't know. I just don't see the value of it over just buying cheaper games that you know are good. This is the thing. Most the games that kids are going to be asking for aren't on these streaming services. You're not seeing the brand new Call of Duty on PlayStation Now. You're not seeing the new Halo on whatever Xbox streaming service. Even if they even have, I actually don't know if they have one or not.
I think they do. Yeah, I think they do, but it's not even as popular as PS Now, so it's like, that's...
But kids, I mean, kids tend to be very predictable with the kinds of games they want nowadays. It's not like, it's not like back when we were younger, where you didn't have a whole lot of ways of telling what was good, so you had to go off of what the box looked like. You don't have kids picking up, like, oh, Shadow of Colossus, this looks really cool, I'm going to try it out. No, you have Call of Duty on the TV every day. You've got Halo on the TV every day. These are the games that the kids are going to want.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not, and those games aren't going to be on a streaming service because they don't have to be. They don't have to pay for that kind of exposure.
Well, not only that, but I feel like in the end, they would be diminishing their profits by doing so.
Oh, absolutely.
With games that they know that they can sell just fine without having to resort to that. It's kind of like the reason why you don't see, movies on Netflix that are still in theaters is because, one, I don't know if legally that's possible, but two, that they're making too much money at the moment to even think about needing to do that. It's not later, that they start trying to work on making that deal, securing that deal. That's typically after like the money from the theater, from the release, box office release, and even movie sales. Once they go into retail, has kind of dried out. That's where you'll see them making those residuals out of streaming platforms like Netflix and whatnot. So, yeah, it's definitely it's just a very tough space. It really is.
Yeah. Well, there was that last good kick on our way out the door.
Yeah.
So,
that was a good kick.
That was. So Bethesda, man, I have got an axe to grind with Bethesda. I have got, don't like Todd Howard. They do a lot of really good stuff, but then they do like even more bad stuff that makes me mad about it. So you see, my big issue and what kind of prompted this was, It's Skyrim. It's always Skyrim. It's been my issue with Bethesda pretty much since they released the game.
Right.
You look at like the way they've treated Skyrim system. I mean, the game has sold consistently every year since the game came out, and they know that it's sold consistently, so they keep like remastering it and releasing it again and releasing it on new systems. To the point where I think they at their E3 conference they made the joke themselves. They had that Key and Peele skit with the Alexa. Like
that was hilarious.
It was absolutely hilarious. I loved every second of it. But this is the thing: Bethesda knows they don't have to make more games because people keep buying Skyrim. Which,
right.
This is the thing. I don't even understand why Skyrim is such a popular game, and maybe this is just because I've never been super wild about like open world exploration games. Like I like open world, but I don't like games where it just gives you a big sandbox and says, okay, now you get to decide what to do. Like, well, no, this is your game. Tell me what to do. Give me some things.
Yeah, I can see that.
And that's been, I mean, most people I talk to that like Skyrim, that seems to be what they like about Skyrim. It isn't like they don't talk about how the story is great or the quest structure is great. It's about it's about them wandering around, finding interesting things in the world, and that's just not like it's nice. It's nice to have, but I guess maybe it's just not what I look for in a game. But so Skyrim was kind of the main thing. Was the kind of the main thing that got me wanting to talk about this. But as you moving forward, I started kind of seeing a pattern and realizing that Bethesda's quality has been steadily dropping off over the years, and their best releases aren't made by Bethesda nowadays. Actually, I put in the slideshow that I have up for this. One of the games I have up is Doom, Doom 2016, which I think, or at least in my personal opinion, was the best game to release in 2016. And that was published by Bethesda, but it wasn't made by Bethesda. It was made by id Software. Meanwhile, what Bethesda had released, I don't remember the year that they released it, but the only game they'd released before that, beyond Skyrim for the umpteenth time, was Fallout 4, which was, I think, pretty much universally agreed that it wasn't as good as New Vegas in terms of anything other than shooting mechanics.
Which wasn't made by Bethesda, yeah.
Yeah, which New Vegas was made by what was it, Obsidian?
Obsidian, yeah.
Yeah, which Obsidian is fantastic. I mean, I can talk about how amazing Obsidian is all day long.
And I think that brings up a good point, though. The whole thing with Bethesda is kind of, here's my take on Bethesda and kind of like the current state of Skyrim. Like, I think Bethesda as a company is, I don't know if they're, I couldn't say for certain that they're making a lot of good moves. I do know that they're working on a few like new big projects anyway. Like I know they have like some interactive partnership of sorts with UFC and like a non-sports space. So who knows what that'll be about, you know?
Yeah, that's
but
weird.
yeah, they're also implementing their new engine soon. That's going to run, you know, Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield and a few of the other games that, you know, are going to be kind of like peeking into next gen. So I think they're still trying to stay steady, but like in the current state of Skyrim, I mean, the game launched in 2011, right? And
yeah,
I mean, it's still going fairly strong. Yeah, no, it's still going fairly strong, but it got me thinking about it like earlier this week, and I was like, you know, well, why is it? Because like personally, I'm not a big fan of Skyrim either. I'm really just like, I kind of keep an eye on Bethesda and like the things that they do, just so I'm kind of like, I know what's going on. But like, I'm not really that big of a fan of the games either. But like, I guess I understand the appeal and the reason, at least that I came to, like from the outside looking in, as to why I feel like that franchise is still able to retain its player base after all this time is mainly because, like, even though there's been, you know, such a gap, I think Bethesda did a good job in like understanding that because of the gap of time between each major Elder Scrolls game, their player base needs the attention span of their player bases isn't. So they warmed up to the idea of like a free and a paid for mod sharing service to be implemented like into the game, right? So like you have the free mods that a lot of people like, especially on console, take advantage of, console and PC both actually. But then you also have a Creation Club, which is like a paid for mod service that I want to say released back in like 2014. And at the time, it kind of like it really did not hit well with their player base. You know, they did not like the move to try to secure it. Yeah,
people were absolutely pissed off about that. To the point that because they had partnered with Valve on that, and it ended up with our holy Lord Gaben having to get involved to shut it down. Like, that's how much backlash there was. That the very, very tippy top of Valve had to make a public statement saying, yeah, no, this isn't happening.
Well, and it's funny because EA ended up taking a page right out of that book with, you know, a couple years later, obviously, with Battlefront 2, you know, where, you know, they initially propose an idea that immediately gets the public to just, like, you know, pitchforks in hands, like, you know, damn near, you know, put them on the cross, and then they back off slowly, come back a couple months later after everybody calmed down and said, so we're going to keep trying to do this. And then, like, the second time around, the reaction was nowhere near as extreme, and so they kind of had, like, more or less a green light to continue doing it. That's what happened with the loot box situation for Battlefront 2. That's exactly what happened with Creation Club for Bethesda. You know, they just ended up coming back to the idea later after everybody calmed down, and then ended up implementing it anyway. And I remember at the time, I was just like, damn, like, it's crazy that it actually managed to get people to, like, turn away this second time around. Like, where was all that fire, you know, from the fan base, you know, when they shot the idea down first time, you know? So now it's actually a thing. It's in the game.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's such a shitty business tactic, honestly. Because you know that was calculated. You know that was planned. They knew that the first time they released it, there was probably going to be some sort of backlash. I don't think they knew it was going to be as intense as it was. Wow, this entire podcast has just been shitting on EA. They knew there was going to be that backlash. I don't think they knew that it was going to be that bad, but they knew it was going to be a thing. And I honestly think they had it planned out all along. They were going to rein it back to appease everyone, and then quietly put it back in once everybody's blown their load for the time around.
Well, and speaking as to why I think that Skyrim has been able to kind of stay alive throughout all of this is because I really do think it's because of the modding community, like the people who are programming these mods into the game for free. Like, they're taking their own time and resources to make the game live. Like, it's almost like it's being artificially kept alive by the player base. Like, I don't think Bethesda is doing anything of substance to really keep this game moving forward. And I definitely don't think that the game has been able to survive the past 7 years just off of, like, pure continued interest alone. It's people are going to feel like the experience is doled out over time. Like, everything kind of progressively weans out over time, right? And this, it should have happened to Skyrim, but I really do think that, like, the modding community in Skyrim has given the game, like, a decent life extension by, like, constantly creating, like, these massive DLC sized mods for console and PC players that keep the experience of the game fresh. And like, there's been working on for years, like Worm's Tooth and like a Sea of Ghosts, and there's like a few other ones that I remember seeing. But there's also, like, on a separate note, not to get too far off track, but there's a full size, like, fan made mod that I think my brother showed me, Fallout Miami, and it has a trailer out, and I don't know if you've seen it or not, but, like, it looks like official as fuck. Like, you know, they're starting to make these games look like legitimately as good, if not better than something that Bethesda themselves would produce. So I think like the continued life for this, kind of like what we're talking about for Skyrim, the fact that it came out in 2011 and like 2018 and it still seems like it's kicking. This is like the community. This is the player base keeping it alive, like in my honest opinion.
Oh, absolutely. That was what I was going to touch on. I mean, this is like exactly like you said. Bethesda's done very little to keep Skyrim alive. They released a handful of DLCs, which were higher quality than the base game, granted. But what's kept, I mean, there's a reason that Mod It Until It Crashes is a meme in the Elder Scrolls community, because that's how you enjoy these games. That's what makes these games good. I remember, I think the game. Let me pull up the mod. I think it's called Enderall. Yeah, Enderall Skyrim. And it's a mod that replaces the entire map with a new map, a new story, a new world to explore. The only thing it keeps, I mean, it overhauls it overhauls the feats, character progression, pretty much everything except for the combat itself. And the interaction system. I think they even changed the UI. It's so intensive. And yeah, no, it comes down to, I mean, that's what keeps games alive. Like you said, Fallout Miami is another very good example of that. And I heard about it. It was something that I was meaning to check out, but I never saw the trailer. But I know. But
yeah, when you get a chance to look at the trailer, because like you'll see exactly what I mean about how like the level of attention to detail that like fans are, and the level of passion that they're putting into trying to make this as good as it could possibly be, is kind of more or less at the center of like this whole, you know, discussion about how, you know, I think the real future of Bethesda when it relates to these franchises is going to be in the players themselves driving it forward. You know, they really are like, you know, the motor operating this whole thing. So it's
but I guess I guess the ultimate question I
find it's kind of interesting.
Is that an acceptable state for a game development company though? Is it okay to, I mean, basically that's like throwing Legos at somebody and saying, well, yep, nope, have fun. I mean, they not even, this thing, I don't buy video games because I want to make the game myself. I buy video games because I'm expecting a product, a finished product, to be given to me.
I'm in the same vein of thought, but I will say, just like on that topic, that say what you want about it, this is actually it's a pretty genius move by Bethesda to more or less say like, oh, so you guys, you know, love these stories in this world enough, or, you know, over all these years of fostering this fan base, you know, since, you know, the very first Elder Scrolls game, and since they acquired guys in you know 2007, I think, you know, they've been like building up this fan base all this time, and then, you know, now they're just kind of like, so there's going to be a lot of time between our next projects, because, you know, a lot goes into them. So, you know, we could be in development for like the next 4 to 5 years between each core game. What are you guys going to do in the meantime? You guys want to, you know, mod the hell out of it, right? Well, why don't we give you our okay and just make it official? Like, throw it into the game, make that a whole system where you guys are basically creating the content for yourselves that keeps the player base still active and keeps the game running all the way up until the next release. It's like, it's a very calculated way of saying like, well, if we don't have to work and you guys are going to work for us for free, then why would we let you?
And yeah, and I think that's why people had such an issue with the paid mod system, because now I mean, I don't have a problem paying for a mod, especially a mod on the level of Enderall or Bruma or something like that. One of those massive mods. Hell, I don't even have a problem paying a small fee for like minor mods, like armor mods and stuff like that. But my issue with like the community system that they had set up was that Bethesda was getting a little bit of that money for literally doing no work. They'd already made the game. All they've done since the game came out and since they released their DLC is bug fixes and updating it for new systems. I don't feel comfortable with the idea of paying for a mod and having a portion of that money go to somebody who literally did nothing to facilitate that mod beyond providing the core framework years ago.
Right.
And on top of that, I mean, we saw it immediately as soon as that system was implemented. A ton of low-quality mods and basically, like, bare minimum efforts to get a little bit of money out of people showed up overnight. The meme when it came out was the HD horse genitalia mod that came out that was on the front page.
Oh yeah.
Of the modding community. It's just one of those things where that's what you see when you start charging for mods, when you have it mandatory that mods be charged for. And then you have all these groups come out, like, exactly like groups like Enderal and Skyrim Bruma. They came out and said, no, we don't want mandatory paid mods. We're not charging for our mods. We're not doing this as a business endeavor. We're doing this as a hobby. We don't want this to be a job. We have, if you want to give us money, we have donation channels that you can go through.
Right.
When you have all of these large groups that are making these mods, like big name mod creators saying this, I mean, what does that say about, like, how Bethesda views the community versus how the community views themselves?
Exactly.
And that's not even touching on. I mean, I haven't even gotten to the declining content compared to older games. When you look at stuff like when you look at stuff like Morrowind and Oblivion, games that genuinely have more character and more interesting things per square inch of the game compared to Skyrim. I mean,
absolutely. See, I actually played Oblivion. I didn't really get into Skyrim.
Oblivion's one of my favorite games of all time. And it has to do with the fact that the questing structure. You had a genuinely interesting questing structure where it wasn't just a fetch quest. It wasn't just go and dive in this dungeon for X amount of time, go all the way to the bottom, and gain a new power from diving through the dungeons and solving the same puzzle that you solved in the previous dungeon. It was things like, I think my favorite example is actually from the Shivering Isles DLC. There's one, yes, fantastic DLC, probably one of the best DLCs ever made.
That was one of the first ones, right?
They only had two DLCs or two major DLCs for the game. They had the Knights of Nine, which was just a big long quest chain, I think like an 8-hour quest chain. And then they had the Shivering Isles, which introduced an entire new map and an entire quest chain.
There was Frostcrag Spire, I think, right? But that was kind of smaller? That was just like
Frostcrag Spire. That doesn't sound familiar.
Remember that one?
Frostcrag Spire. That's Skyrim.
Is that?
Wait, hold on.
No. That was Oblivion. I think I remember buying that back then, but it was kind of like it was a smaller piece of content. Like it was just kind of this tower that I think you remember being able to.
No, you're right. That is. I can't believe I've never even seen this, man. I'm gonna have to.
It was a very small piece of content, so yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
But going back to what I was saying, though, I mean, as compared to a Skyrim dungeon crawl, which is literally just go through this place, kill draugrs, maybe a couple spiders, get to the end, kill the big bad draugr, and then get a new power. You have the quest in Shivering Isles where you go into the dungeon, and instead of having to fight through a dungeon, you're the one throwing the traps to the adventurers. You would have, like, in every room the adventurers would go into, there were a pair of levers, and you could pull them for different traps. And there was no way to fail the mission, but it was an interesting... it was an interesting way to kind of turn started dungeon crawl on its head. And the game was full of moments like that, and full of cool little bits like that. In that same DLC, there was one of the first bosses you fight in that. You can't kill him normally. You can't just run up and brute force him. You have to find out. There are like a couple of different tricks you can pick up to beat him. But you have to find one of those ways to do it. And it's stuff like that. But in Skyrim, when they throw a boss at you, it's just a big thing with a large health bar.
You're right, yeah.
And it's just frustrating to see this, just looking at it and realizing that Bethesda has the potential to make these interesting quest structures, and has the potential to make, genuinely good games, but they release Skyrim for the umpteenth time, and Skyrim has the fetch quests, which is nothing but fetch quests.
Port it over to your microwave.
That's exactly. Yeah. I'm waiting to play it on my fridge display.
Exactly. No, but I think that kind of speaks to a larger issue, kind of like what you were saying before about how, like, if you compare the level of, like, you know, dedication and detail on more than just, you know, bosses with big health bars, and, you know, just kind of like lazy implementations, like, you know, in Skyrim with, you know, some of their earlier work, like, you know, Oblivion and Morrowind. It's just, it's crazy. It's almost like night and day, you know. But and I honestly wonder what kind of caused that, and I wonder if a lot of the fan base kind of sees the digression over time rather than just, like, you know, because I gotta imagine that a lot of people are kind of blindsided to that fact, because they're so into the franchise to begin with that, like,
right.
It doesn't matter what gets thrown in front of them, you know, they're gonna love it the same way. They're gonna treat it as the same. You know, I think Skyrim, anyways, has probably picked up more popularity than Oblivion or Morrowind ever did, because I think if anything, like the exposure and the player base has only been growing over time. But, you know, that's it seems kind of like it's going against the fact that, you know, maybe the game hasn't been getting better over time. The games haven't been getting better.
No, and that's.
But, you know.
Yeah. But.
Yeah, no. I was gonna say, like, you know, when it comes down to it, I mean, the fans kind of like being the driving force though behind, you know, the future implementations of these games in massive, like, DLC size mods. Like, there's what was it called, Tamriel Rebuilt, I think.
Yes. Tamriel Rebuilt is a really cool project, actually.
Well, and yeah, no, it was like, what, 17 years in the making, completely fan-made mod. It's like for Morrowind. It's just like the level of passion and dedication that their players have towards making this franchise better. It's like, I think it rivals, if anything, surpasses, like, the developers want to actually make this a better franchise. If that makes sense. It's like, I think that's kind of that's at least what I see. You know, I see this. You know, this whole thing in the future, it's really going to be carried by the fans because I think, one, like, the structure of how they have this all set up encourages the fans to create the content for themselves. I think Bethesda has not only given them the green light to do that, but they've, like, more or less encouraged them to keep themselves busy in between their projects. But kind of like we were talking about, but at the same time, I feel like, you know, the fans are kind of like their own fans in the bigger sense of it all. You know, they're kind of like fans of themselves for doing this, because I can't remember the last thing that a Bethesda or that a Skyrim fan has been excited about in terms of like an official release for the game. You know, a lot of the bigger things tend to be, you know, that they talk about are a lot of these projects that people are making, the fans themselves are.
Right. Yeah. Sorry about the dogs in the background, by the way, folks. I'm sure they'll stop in a bit. Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's really frustrating to see this. Like you said, it seems like a lack of dedication as compared to as compared to the fans. And I absolutely agree. It's why it has me nervous about things like Skyrim 6, where their reveal trailer was literally just, look at this empty field, Skyrim 6, clap please.
I know, yeah, that was so awful.
And I mean, the same thing with Starfield.
I was like, you got to be kidding me, right? Like, I mean, they can't be that. That's like the most arrogant way to just release a game. Is just like empty field, 20 seconds, Elder Scrolls 6, clap. Like,
it was the same thing with Starfield. They literally did that with a game that nobody's heard of before. They're just a brand new IP, and they're just like, hey, here's space. Clap, please.
Yeah. I should be able to just be Todd Howard and say Elder Scrolls 6 and get you guys to jump out of your seats. That's it.
It's like that meme, the Marge Simpson meme, where where she's like X and everybody like gasps and she goes, is bad, and everyone starts clapping. That's Todd Howard. That's how Todd Howard lives his life.
Oh my god.
And then like on top of that, you look at like Fallout 76. It's shaping up. I mean, from everything we've seen so far, it's shaping up to be something the community really doesn't want. It's shaping up to be like an MMO light, in the same vein as like Destiny 2.
Yeah.
And it really is one of those things that blows my mind, especially when you have all these obviously better development teams that are under Bethesda. Like, id Software, I mean, this thing, I know I keep trying to give id Software handjobs under the table, but I mean, they deserve it. They really do.
Doom deserves a handjob.
Doom deserves several handjobs.
At the same time.
They and I mean now they've got the trailer for Rage 2, and Rage 1. No, granted, Rage 1 wasn't super great, but like Rage 2 looks fantastic. Rage 2 looks like, I mean, unpopular opinion here, but I wasn't like super wild about Borderlands. Like it was an alright game, but Rage 2 looks like everything I wanted in Borderlands. I don't know. It's just I don't understand how they can, how the development teams can stand to look at these obviously superior. Well, not even superior. I don't want to use the word superior because it's not that it is a better development team. It's just that it has more passion for their games, and I don't understand how you can be working for Bethesda and not see that and want to emulate that same passion in your games. And maybe
they probably have a good retirement package.
Yeah, maybe it's the higher ups. Maybe probably it's just the higher ups. It's probably not even like the guys on the low levels who are just making the game or making the designing assets. When you get to be as big as you know, of a studio as them, as Bethesda, you know, and you have like all of these really rich shareholders kind of breathing down your neck to make sure that every step that you take is completely calculated in the way that they see. It's like I'm not sure if by the time that all of the real decision making and corporate bullshit trickles down to the bottom to the low level developers, you know, I'm not sure if they really have much freedom to move around. They're probably stuck. You know, it's probably not going to feel near as organic as it needs to feel and needs to be in order to be something that appeals to us. You know, which is probably why half the seem a little out of touch. That's the thing. You look at you look at what happens when artists are allowed to run free and do what they want, and things like Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. I don't know if you know anything about that game, but it was made by an indie team on like a shoebox budget, like literally like one of the smallest budgets for a game I've seen in a very long time. And they made this fantastic game, dripping with atmosphere, and it was because they cared. It was because all they wanted to do was make a fantastic game about what they wanted to make, and they made it on fucking pennies. It didn't follow. It didn't follow actually, that's a perfect analogy for Matty Rambo. Artists, devs, writers are being forced to follow cookie cutter game design. It doesn't follow a cookie cutter game design. It doesn't follow like a specific format. It's just the thematic game that they wanted to make. And I don't know. It's just really it's frustrating to see this much smaller team be able to make a vastly superior game and make a fraction of the money. Now, that's not saying that they didn't make money. They made a boatload of money on that game. But, like, compared to what Bethesda's made off of Skyrim, they're basically running a lemonade stand.
It is really a sad thing to have to, it's a sad pill to have to swallow, but yeah, I think that if anything just speaks to like the current state of the industry, like at large. I think Bethesda being one of the bigger key players in single player RPGs right now, with what you see them do with Skyrim, yeah, I can't help but to be upset by it as well, and the direction it all seems it's going, but yet it still sells really well. Just as well as any other big AAA game that we can think of. It's just that I think when it comes down to it, it's probably built upon a number of factors. Probably the budget that they have to deal with, for one, the amount of different platforms that they've ported over to. The Skyrim is literally ported over to like almost everything. It's just
they got it on the Wii U now, don't they?
I think,
or the Switch, not the Wii U. Excuse me.
Right, the Switch, right.
In my mind, they're the same console.
Yeah, no, they're porting it over to the NES next. So.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna see it on the Virtual Boy here in a bit.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. It's just one of those things. And then you see the same thing with Fallout 4. Like I said, was pretty much universally agreed to be of lesser quality to why am I blanking on the name now? New Vegas.
Right.
And it has to do with the fact that they just had the team that they had work on New Vegas was just inherently a more passionate team that was wanting to make this this very classic role-playing feel to their game, and that's why you look at the options that you're given in New Vegas, where you're allowed to, you can side with the bad guys, you can side with the less bad guys, you can go your own way, you can do all this crazy stuff, but you can do that to an extent in Fallout 4, but I mean, at the end of the day, you're kind of pigeonholed into one position. You can't. There's a whole lot that you can't do, and I think what really kind of shows it off is the way that they handle the voice protagonist, and the fact that you basically can't turn down quests in that game. When you talk to a quest giver and they talk to you, they offer you a quest. You basically get three options. You can say yes. You can say yes sarcastically, or you can say no, and then they'll assume you said yes anyway and give you the quest.
Yeah. No, did you see, like, speaking of Obsidian, the people who made New Vegas or whatever?
Yeah.
Did you see that when? Let's see, what was it? I want to say it was when Fallout 76 got announced. Like in the days leading up to that, Bethesda made an announcement that they were like releasing something new in terms of like a Fallout game, and everybody was kind of like on the edge of their seat because they weren't sure what it was called, and they hadn't seen the trailer for it yet. I remember Bethesda, like their actual like official Twitch channel, they had a live stream running for like a day or so, where it just it was like trying to like hype them up for like a reveal that they were going to make just before E3.
Right.
And that ended up being Fallout 76. Well, apparently Obsidian had a little more information than we did in the days prior, before we got that announcement given to us by Bethesda, because Obsidian tweeted out that it wasn't them, like that they weren't the ones behind developing it, which, and they said that in like, I think the connotation of it was that, they were kind of sad that they weren't the ones that were involved in doing it. Because had been the rumors at that point in time that Bethesda was not going to be developing whatever this was that they were going to announce. It was going to be a different company. So a lot of people were like, is Obsidian coming back? Like, are they going to do please tell me, because they were the ones that did really well with New Vegas, and we'd love to see them back to like handle another Fallout game. Right. Everybody kind of wants like a New Vegas too. Like that would have been the ultimate reveal. But Obsidian was actually really upset themselves, or you could tell they were at least somewhat disappointed. And I think that, like, speaking about like the kind of passion about it all, that I think that speaks for itself, that you have a company like Obsidian who like really just wants to get kind of back in there and give the fans like a really heartfelt, well done project.
Right.
They want the chance to be able to do that again, and but then you have companies like not to, I mean, we've already done it enough, but I'll just go ahead and pick on EA again. But
they deserve it.
Who just could not really give a fuck less, and I think when it comes down to it, it's like
Andromeda is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's sad that sometimes the people who seemingly end up winning, these bigger deals are the ones that just really don't care about the industry, don't care about what they're putting out there, and truly don't care about the fans. But the ones who really have the motivation to make the games better are the ones with the small voice. So I guess it is what it is, but
yeah,
it would be nice if there were a little more fairness, because I would love to see Obsidian tackle another Fallout game. That'd be amazing.
No, I agree. And that's, I remember, because I thought, like, when they first announced that they were doing something with Fallout, I was curious too. I was like, oh, is Obsidian getting involved? Because I was convinced that the next game they were going to make was an Elder Scrolls game, that it wasn't going to be a Fallout game, because that's the way that Bethesda's always done it. They've always released an Elder Scrolls game, then they release a Fallout game, then they release an Elder Scrolls game, so on and so forth. So I was genuinely surprised when it was a Fallout game, and then I was like, okay, so is it gonna be Obsidian getting involved with it then? But no, it's gonna be them. And I don't know, just the fact that, like I said, it's going to be, it seems very much like it's going to be an MMO light, and we've already seen how poorly those go over, and how they can end up being very exploitative, and designed more for siphoning money out of your pocket than entertaining you. I don't know. It's a very it's a very predatory way that they've been going about treating their fans lately.
It's a really good point that you bring up. Is this the first time that we've seen Bethesda openly announce and a Fallout game at roughly the same time?
Yeah, no, this is absolutely the first time. To my knowledge, I've never heard of a Fallout and an Elder Scrolls game being announced at the same time. Maybe way back when.
And on top of that, like brand new IP they said is going to basically be carried in the same vein of the Elder Scrolls and the Fallout games. Like it's going to be like one of their bigger projects.
I wonder what prompted that, honestly. I wonder if just because they're seeing space, sci-fi themed games kind of making a comeback, or at least becoming well known in the public light. Stuff like Star Citizen, and not EVE Online, because EVE Online's been a while. but
No Man's Sky
No
next
Man's
update
Sky.
came out like a week or two ago. So you know, considering this was a couple months back, I don't think they were probably looking at No Man's Sky as a good indicator
Yeah.
as to what to do. You know, they were like, yeah, no, fuck that game.
Well, the thing, if they're intelligent, then they would be looking at No Man's Sky. But as what not to do. I mean, that's one of the biggest things you can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a company, it's much more valuable to look at something and see, okay, let's not do that, than it is to look at a different company's successes. That's why,
you know, I have a theory that it's actually a lot simpler than that in terms of like why Bethesda is looking at like making a game that rivals that of the Elder Scrolls and the Fallout franchise, but like in space. I think they're wanting to build as many Skyrim-esque games, or I should say Elder Scrolls-esque games as they can, just all in different settings so they can like tackle everything. It's like you have essentially Skyrim in space, Skyrim post-apocalyptic, and then Skyrim medieval. It's like, you know, let's just get involved in everything, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's just really, and I feel like that the quality of the game is really going to suffer from that. When you split your team when you spread your team that thin, I mean, there's the thing, making these games isn't easy. When I'm talking about, oh, you know, they're not putting in any effort with it, like, comparatively speaking, the amount of effort that goes into just making a game, not even making a good game, just making a game is a ridiculous amount of effort.
Yeah.
But when you're spreading your talent that thin, I don't see that doing well for the overall quality of any of those games. It's the same trap that Telltale games fell down, where when they were working on one project when they just released The Walking Dead, and that was the only game they were doing, it was an awesome game. It was one of the most emotional experiences I've had in gaming in a very long time when I played it. And then they started to, they were taking on 2 projects at a time, and you could see the hit in quality, but it wasn't a big deal. And then by the time that everybody gave up on playing Telltale games, they were working on it was either 4 or 6 games at one time. And that's the danger of spreading your team too thin. And
yeah, absolutely.
I can only see that problem being compounded on games of this magnitude. When you're talking about big open world games where you have to create giant, vast landscapes, and you have to populate those landscapes. You have to follow the 30-second rule, where every 30 seconds something should be grabbing the player's attention. I can't see that doing well for that meaning well for the overall quality of the games.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And I promise you, like, if that ends up actually happening, it ends up, that's kind of like their train of thought, is to let, spread our developers super thin and then try to create like a new project, like a completely open world AAA RPG out of that, while they have, everybody else spread to, other projects at the same time, and then ends up taking that kind of hit. This is going to seem kind of like, looking back on this conversation, in hindsight, it's going to seem like this is where it all led up. You know what I mean? Like, this is kind of why we were talking about Bethesda, regressing, after all this time of finally getting to this point where they were, such a big studio. Right. It all seemed like it's going downhill when, they take a pretty bad misstep and of having to pay for it. So yeah, hopefully they don't do that.
Hopefully they don't. And I don't want them to fail. There is no game that I've ever seen that I've been like, man, I hope that game does terrible. Not a single one.
I just hope Skyrim stops advertising. That's it.
Yes.
Like you've had plenty of time to advertise the game. Please stop.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I don't think you need to advertise at this point. I think that if Todd Howard had a casual conversation over dinner with his family, but oh yeah, we're porting Skyrim to X, like the next day everyone would know.
Yeah. Now you got me actually thinking about like Todd Howard just sitting there with like like steak and mashed potatoes. It's like just a nice meal, just like with his family, like his wife and his kids there at the table, and like everybody's asking how their day is, and he's just like talking about Skyrim.
Yeah.
It's like,
oh, that'd be awful, man. That's one of the things. Like I want to get involved in developing video games, but I know that if I got involved, I would start hating video games. Just because
I could see part of that being true for sure. I mean, depending on how dedicated you are about it. I think who was it? There was a developer I remember. Well, no, actually, I think it was a YouTube channel that you turned me on to. They had like interviews with a few different key developers. Like what game it was pertaining to.
No Clip. It was No Clip.
Yeah, that's right. Well, because I remember, listening to part of the interview, and he was talking about how, like, there was this bug that he was like really trying to fix, but it was like getting close to Christmas Eve, and he was like, okay, well, I want to like go home and obviously spend the holidays with my family, but I know like if I don't get this bug fixed before I go home, for the week or whatever that I'm off, then I'm not going to be able to like enjoy myself for the weekend. I'm just going to be constantly thinking about it. So he was like, should I keep trying to like tackle this and fix it and then actually have like a good holiday with my family? Like they, deserve to have me, actually feeling well about it for, or like, do I just, spend like the next week like bitter as fuck and then come back, and try to do it then.
And that's gotta be
like I can see how it could probably be like that if you were in the industry as a developer. Like you really want to get certain things done, but certain tasks are obviously pretty difficult when it comes to programming. I would imagine it's not going to go as smoothly as you want it to, so it's like a lot of things just come up and kind of like throws a monkey wrench in the whole thing. So
no, it's actually it's a running joke in the development community, in the coding community, where you have an issue and you go, oh, my code's not working, I have no idea why, and you make a whole bunch of changes and it starts bringing you, oh, my code's working and I have no idea why.
Yeah.
that's kind of the thing. That's why development is such a frustrating job, because a lot of the times you're just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and hoping that it actually works. I mean, obviously, like you have to have a basic understanding, but once you start getting it into the nitty gritty, and I need this thing to work this specific way. I know how to get it to generally work with that, but I don't know how to get it to specifically do that. It can get really frustrating.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. That's at least what it seemed like from that guy. It's like I kind of felt bad for him in that moment. I was like, Jesus Christ, I couldn't imagine if I had to like go and enjoy the holidays with my family. Like I'd be coming home like obviously really pissed off. It's like, but it's Christmas. It's like, I don't care.
The game's broken. I need to go back.
Yeah. But I mean, no, it's. But I feel like on this whole thing with Bethesda, it's. I don't want to say that they're, spiraling out or anything like that. I think that they're staying pretty steady with what they're doing, and they have a few other things, like I mentioned, their new graphics engine that they're going to be implementing. I think Fallout 76 is the last game that's going to be running on their current engine, and then everything after that is going to be on the. So there's some things to look forward to, and then this weird like UFC thing partnership that they have. I don't even know what that's about, but I guess we'll see. Plus, they're hosting some charity event. I think I forgot what it's called, but they have their hands in a number of things, and I think they're trying to stay busy. But like in terms of developing games and like the actual. I guess the future of them as a developer, and not just like kind of the ER side of Bethesda, if that makes sense. I think they're still doing fine, but when it pertains to Skyrim and the future of the Elder Scrolls games, anyways, is really going to be kind of on the players. But funny enough, I think the players don't really mind that. I think they kind of like being left to their own devices to like make the future of the game themselves and do it how they see fit and do it and have Bethesda's official blessing to do it. You know, it's I think that probably gives them even more motivation to want to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if it works for them, it works. But yeah, it's a kind of a weird dynamic where you actually have the people make for a game that's not necessarily crowdfunded.
Right. I think we pretty much exhausted the topic, though. On top of that, the dogs are just absolutely going nuts out there. So I don't want to subject anybody else to that amount of noise. So I think we're gonna log off here. But
I see a squirrel. That's it.
It's probably what it is, honestly. I don't know what got into them, man. They were not this bad last time.
No, they actually they're not really picking up all that much on my end. I don't know how the stream hears it, but yeah, I mean, I hear them, but they're not really that loud. So.
The stream definitely hears it. But yeah, no, it's picking up. I'll probably at some point have to go back and try to adjust my settings in OBS here. But in the meantime, I think that's gonna just about do it for us. Sorry Reed couldn't be on tonight. I'm not sure what happened to him. But I think this is just about do it for us. Thank you guys so much for watching tonight. This has been the Not Important Gaming Podcast with Jeremy and Derek. I am Jeremy.
I am Derek.
And you can catch us on YouTube at Not Important Gaming Podcast. And you can catch us here. You can catch us here at Twitch TV/Ubarlook. That is UBARALOOK. Thank you guys so much, and have a wonderful night.
Take care and good night.